The most important decision that we make is not where we live or who our partners are, but rather to what degree we let external circumstances determine how we feel. And this sounds like the basic premise of Stoicism, but I actually think there's a distinction between what I'm trying to say and what Stoicism offers. Because Stoicism generally offers a perspective wherein we do not allow ourselves extreme feelings of celebration and joy when things go well. And in return, we know that the bad things also are only passing and should not completely dictate our emotions. I think the classic example is if there's an excellent, say, athlete, when they win a game, they shouldn't then think I'm a horrible athlete and have horrible self-esteem. Excuse me, when they lose a game. And on the other hand, when they win a game, they should not then think I am the greatest, I am the best, I will never lose again, I am God. Both of these things are mistakes in relation to their emotion and their self-esteem. In the same way, all of us should take a perspective when things happen to us that allows for some gap between pain and suffering that viscerally comes when something goes wrong, and what we then choose to actually take in and feel and be traumatized by or be hurt by or be affected by or base our beliefs on. Now, the ultimate example of this gap is in the development from a baby to an adult. A baby is denied something and they are immediately taken by a feeling of catastrophe. They're in total pain, total suffering. They feel probably an extreme of emotion that adults never really feel. Like when the baby is denied the cookie and goes into a temper tantrum, that's more than an adult will probably feel in intensity, except when like a loved one dies, and honestly, maybe even not then. And so emotional maturity is almost by definition developing that gap, developing the part of you that says, okay, I don't get a cookie, but what is a cookie in the grand scheme of things? What does my cookie really mean? Why should my cookie mean that I have a sense of total catastrophe, that the universe is unfair, that nothing is working? So we all believe that this gap needs to be developed because clearly, if someone cries when they're denied a cookie at 30 years old, we cannot say that they're emotionally mature or an adult. That's almost by definition what that is. And so the extreme example of this, and I think the most pure example is in Buddhism, and specifically Zen Buddhism, is to say that nothing that happens to us, in the same way that nothing that happens to a baby, like being denied the cookie, is of great enough significance in the world to make us feel miserable and hateful and angry and worthless. Because being broken up with is, by the Buddhist perspective, not so different from the baby being denied the cookie. Like, yes, I'm sorry you, Mr. X name, who lives X place, doesn't have the girlfriend that he wanted. But the stars are still in the sky. You're still you. This moment is still this moment, and the girlfriend breaking up with you is that moment, and that moment has passed. And even putting aside the fact that for a human to survive emotionally, they need to develop this gap, we can see that honestly, all intense negative emotion comes from self-centeredness. And this is almost like the essential point of Buddhism, is that your ego, the part of you that feels really like you're a god when things go well, is the same part of you that feels miserable when you're denied that goodie that you want. And by understanding this and identifying not as X name who lives at X place and went to X high school, but instead identifying as, say, the entire universe, or intelligent godlike force, or like the Tao, or God himself, or whatever you choose to call your God, by identifying with that, by identifying with something broader that doesn't care if you didn't get a promotion, that doesn't care if you didn't get that cookie, that doesn't care if your bus is late. Because while your bus is late, there are polar bears in the Arctic, there are elephants trumpeting in Africa, there are people falling in love somewhere in China, there are people in your very state having the best moment of their lives, and there are people somewhere else watching something happen that is so much worse than whatever is happening to you that you cannot even imagine it. In this perspective, which we can call ego death, is really the cure to these extreme, painful, traumatic emotional reactions that most of us have. The part of us that makes us want to punch a wall when our bus is late, or when someone unjustly gets a promotion over us, or someone that we like doesn't like us back in exactly the way we want. When we feel like the universe is truly unfair, that is when we need to lean into a gap, more than just the basic gap that separates us from little children, but the gap that kind of separates a serious spiritual practitioner from a normal person, which is to say, it's not just about the little things. The big things also are not of such great universal significance that they should determine how I feel in relation to the universe. They should not trigger depressive episodes. They should not make me feel like the universe is evil. Because, guys, face it, we all know that right now there are beautiful things happening. There's some supernova in another universe. There's probably aliens living great lives somewhere. There are, baby puppies being born right now and like playing with their siblings. Like all of that is happening right now. All of that is part of this universe that you're in, that you're currently upset in. So the decision I'm saying you need to make is to radically accept that. And I think that's why I really didn't accept this and didn't take it seriously till recently, when I realized what Stoicism offers isn't really radical enough, but what Buddhism offers is, which is to say that one human being's fate should not really dictate what that human being feels, because luck is just such a bitch. You could be born during the Black Plague. Luckily, you weren't. You could be born as the son of a king and live a privileged life where you get everything you want. No one is controlling that. No one is dictating that. There's no rhyme or reason. It's not fair. And even if there's rhyme or reason and you believe in destiny, it's clearly not fair. So why should you let it bother you? And then it's just looking down the trickle-down effects of that essential unfairness. The reason your bus isn't late, the country you were born in, the state of the economy. None of these things have to do with you. And so in the same way, these little petty problems also have nothing to do with you. And therefore, you, the broader you, the universal you, should not feel so destroyed by them, so in pain by them. Now, this is a practice. This is something we develop through meditation, through meditating on this idea, through understanding the broad spectrum of experience between the pain we're feeling and the pain other people feel and the joy that others feel, all at the same moment, all on the same planet, all in the same universe. And by using this perspective, we can free ourselves, I think, from these horrible extremes of emotion, and certainly from the extremes of belief that come from emotion, that come from a few disappointments in a row. And as a last thought experiment, I want to share with you something I often consider, which is the way people travel. They often will say, well, I didn't like this country because the taxi driver was mean to me, the people at the airport were mean to me, and then I went to a bar and a mean guy talked to me. And so because they were unlucky, and it's a shame for them, but because they were unlucky and they interacted with 5 bad people in a row, the world of this country, which may be a country of 1 billion people, is now like evil to them and bad to them. Because they interacted with 10 people, they got unlucky, and so they lost 10 coin flips in a row, interacted with 10 people. Now they think China or India or Turkey or wherever is a bad country full of bad people. And the thing is, this isn't just about traveling. This is your life. You might think because a few unlucky things have happened to you that the universe is unfair, that things are cruel. But guys, the universe is not a place where everyone is lucky all the time. It's not a place where we all get what we want. What we can do is learn to mature from baby to adult to an actually spiritually, let's say, active person that separates themselves as an ego from the petty things that happen around them and says, the me that wants to cry, the me that feels so much pain right now, is not the real me. The real me is far broader and far stronger. And I can see from history that there's almost no amount of suffering and difficulty that a human being can't handle. Because even in the darkest moments in history, things that you cannot even imagine, that no one right now in the Western world can imagine, people survived that. And you have to ask, if they could, why can't we?